Today, we began discussing Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey, which is a nom de plume for Daniel Abraham and Ty Frank. And now, I'm not really sure what the purpose of using a pen name is if you're going to tell everybody who you really are at the end of the very first book you guys write together. You know what I mean?
Maybe it's just to keep things simple. It's just easier to remember one name, even if it is James S.A. Corey.
All right, so I have my own pet theory that I can't back it up at all.
Yeah.
But I'm suspicious that books that are co-authored don't do as well as books that have a single author.
People feel like it's not a real book or something like that.
I don't know. I mean, like, I love to collaborate, and I have no problem reading a book that's co-authored, but then again, I haven't.
I think it actually kind of works. I mean, I don't know how they split up the work.
I do. It's on Wikipedia.
How did they break it up?
It's by chapter.
It is by chapter. Did they do different?
Frank writes all of the Holden, Bobby, and Anna chapters, while Abraham writes the Miller, Melba, Avasarala, Bull, and Prax chapters.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense to me because I think there's a definite, especially in that first couple Miller chapters, there's a different vibe to me. It's written
big
more,
time.
You
big
know,
time.
I think it works in its favor. It helps with the characterizations a little bit, I think.
I'm not sure that a single author could have as easily switched styles.
Right. I agree.
Maybe. A good author certainly could.
Sure.
A really practiced one could. But okay, so anyway, that's the book we're reading.
Yes.
Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. We're just going to refer to these people as James S.A. Corey, though, throughout the book, because there's no point in referring to them individually, I don't think. They wrote the book with the name Corey. I'm going to use it. My copy, I don't know about yours, but my copy is like a 27th printing or something like that of the trade paperback published by Orbit. And on the cover, there's a blurb by George Martin. On the back cover, there's another blurb by George Martin. The Wall Street Journal, NPR, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so apparently it's very well regarded. So Martin says, quote, interplanetary adventure the way it ought to be written, end quote. And if that's not high praise, let's consider this timeline. George Martin published Game of Thrones in 1996, and it took 15 and a half years for it to make it to television.
Yeah.
Similarly, there's a book called Altered Carbon by Richard K. Morgan, an English guy, and his book was published, and then the TV show came out on Netflix 16 years later. By contrast,
I didn't know that was a book. Interesting.
It's a very good book too.
Okay.
Not a great series, but a very good book.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
There's 3 books.
Mm-hmm.
So when I said series, the second and third books, the second and third books are not as good as the first one. The first one's pretty mind-blowing. Leviathan Wakes got turned into the television show The Expanse in 4.5 years.
Wow.
So I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been because Ty Frank was George Martin's assistant. Hence all the blurbs and etc. But I don't know.
Means you know people.
It does.
Right. Number one, you know people.
Right. And by the time this was getting ready to come out in 2011, Martin was hugely popular. So his influence could have helped this book come along.
Probably his connection for sure. Even that tenuous of a connection, like that guy worked for him.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't call that tenuous at all. George Martin's word in 2011 was probably as good as gold. When George Martin published Game of Thrones, nobody knew who he was, really. He'd been writing for television for years, had stopped writing novels long before then. So nobody knew. So it was a real slow burn for him to get popular again, or at all. He wasn't popular when he stopped writing.
Right. I was not sure. It was a slow burn, but when the show came out, I think the book readers really came to his banner, let's say.
Well, my point, though, is that it's not necessarily a fair comparison because Martin had to do a slow burn to get popular, and his popularity may have helped this book gain immediate popularity because it was immediately popular. It was nominated for awards. It was a bestseller, blah, blah, blah. And, in 4.5 years, it was on television. That is not something that happens for an unpopular work, right?
Yes. Though I don't think we were necessarily comparing them.
Nevertheless, here we are, 8 years after the book originally appeared, very late to the party. And
of course.
Here we are reading it.
Yay.
Okay, and also book 8 came out this summer, and there's another book due out next year. So they're basically pumping out one book a year.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, if you're a fan of this story and these books, that's great.
Well, what is also great is that the television show, which did get canceled after 3 seasons on Sci-Fi, got picked up by Jeff Bezos.
Yes, which I'm happy about.
Yeah, for Amazon Prime. I haven't seen the show. You have seen the show.
Yeah.
I've read the book. You haven't read the book.
Interesting scenario here.
We're going to see how it goes, because I'm confused at this point about what we are actually offering to people. And like, I want to see the show. I want to watch the show, but I don't want my interpretation of the book to be in any way influenced by the television show.
Yeah, and I feel like I need to watch those first couple episodes just to maybe check for you to see like if any characters are introduced that we haven't been introduced to yet.
Well, I will eventually watch the show, but it'll definitely be after we read this book.
Oh, okay, cool.
I'm just not going to mess with that process.
What do you mean when you said you're confused by what we're offering? You mean by what's actually happening in the book right now?
No. I'm more of a joke. It's a poorly worded joke. Like we're in the process of doing a read along, yes, where we're hoping that the people listening to this podcast are also reading the book and not relying on us to tell them what's in the book. You know, Exactly. It's like hoping that, we're building a conversation between people that are reading the books and enjoying them, as a supplement. This is a supplement.
Sure. It's like a book club.
I don't want to insert too much book or television knowledge. We'll talk about the TV show if it's pertinent, but for the most part, this is about the book.
It is hard for me not to picture them as they are on the show.
Exactly. All right. So let's talk real quickly about how we're going to do this.
Sure.
But I guess before we do that, let's just admit that we're going to spoil something for somebody. It's just the nature of the beast. If you haven't read the book and you're listening to this, you're going to get lots of spoilers. We're going to spoil everything. What we're going to do is we're going to go essentially in chronological order, chapter by chapter, and we're going to put down a foundation that tells us the context for the chapter, and then we're going to discuss the chapters in turn. We're not going to jump ahead and spoil things. All right. So let me see if I've got any other notes real quick. Yeah, I have a story to tell you.
A story? Ooh, exciting.
It's not really exciting. I'm pretty sure I met Ty Frank.
What?
And I didn't know it at the time.
When was this?
This year, at the very, very end of spring, there was a book fair in Albuquerque, and both of the authors are from Albuquerque.
Oh.
And I went to look for books, obviously.
Yeah.
And when I was there, I was talking to one of the guys from Page One Books, which is the big local store in Albuquerque, used and new books. And he introduced me to this person as this was George Martin's assistant.
Huh.
And I was like, what a weird way to introduce somebody.
Yeah.
I'm not going to swing on your balls because you used to be the assistant for George Martin.
Yeah.
That's not my way. And I don't think that's a big deal. Like, you're an assistant.
You're a nobody. Who cares?
You're an assistant, right? You're not George Martin. And so by being George Martin's assistant, you don't become special, right?
Well, no. And who are you anyway? Who cares what you think?
But if the guy if he had introduced this fella as, this is half of the author of Leviathan Wakes, I would have been, oh, well, hello, good to meet you. I've read your book. I read your first book. I really enjoyed it.
That's unfortunate.
I agree. But anyway, I failed that test because I didn't realize who he was.
You weren't enough of a fanboy.
I'm not a fanboy. I've never. It's just not my style.
Yeah.
But, whatever. I shook his hand. Good to meet you. Whatever. It was definitely the long-haired guy. So, all right, let's get the party started.
Let's do it.
8 years late. No big deal.
No big deal. 8 years late. 3 show seasons late as well.
We're definitely gonna throw our weight around. All right. So, Jill, quick question.
Yeah.
If you had to hammer a square peg into a round hole, how would you describe this book stylistically? Genre-wise, how would you describe it?
Man, just based off of all of the space talk alone,
yes,
or kind of, I don't want to say science talk, but science fiction space talk, I would have to say science fiction with some other elements at play.
George Martin's blurb calls it interplanetary adventure, and it's most closely associated with space opera for the chapters that take place in space with all the fighting and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, sure, that makes sense to me. What
about the other chapters?
Well, obviously the other chapters are a little more grounded, even though they're in space.
Space is just the setting.
Right, exactly. Miller's first chapter, well, we're not there yet, but it definitely has a more like hard-boiled feel to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a cop story.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the prologue.
Prologue. Julie.
Is that what it's called? Julie?
Yep.
All right. So our tale begins in space. Julie Mao and the rest of the small crew of the little transport ship Scopuli have been taken aboard another ship by force, and Julie has been dumped into a storage locker for safekeeping. Someone told someone else to shoot her if she makes a noise. So that's where our story kind of begins.
And she's in a spacesuit, no?
No, she's not in a spacesuit. They got taken off of their ship without spacesuits. She's thrown in that locker, and there's a spacesuit in that locker.
Okay, so she puts on the spacesuit in the locker.
I don't think she even does that. That's where she gets the water. She dismantled it to get the water out of it.
Oh, okay. So she was filling up the catheter bag, not wearing the suit. But
I don't know.
In a suit.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Just curious because...
No, I get you, but I don't think it was clear. The purpose of a prologue is to really quickly get us into the story, get us interested in the story, get us hooked, as it were, and make it irresistible for us so that we must continue to read. And at the same time, it needs to kind of get us up to speed as far as the rules go. We're learning that being in space is not abnormal for humans anymore.
Gotcha.
It's easy pie. If it was like NASA, they would never get out of their spacesuits. They would be in their spacesuits the entire time they were traveling.
Mm-hmm.
And when they got to the space station, then they might take their spacesuits off.
Which is why I think my question was relevant. And I just reread it. And no, she didn't get in the suit. She was using it for water and for expelling her bodily fluids.
She was peeing.
Yeah.
Why can't you just say she was peeing?
I guess I was trying to sound smarter. God. Why do you have to be such a jerk about it?
Well, she's in there for 8 days. On the first day, they said to shoot her if she made a noise. On the second day, she was still too scared to move. On the third day, she was thirsty, so she found the water, and she started drinking the water.
In the stale suit.
Yeah. And then several days after that...
I don't care if you don't think it's important. I found it interesting.
That's fine. At some point in time, she hears the engineer get thrown out of an airlock. He's begging for his life, and then he gets tossed out the airlock.
I don't know if they use the term yet. Spaced.
Oh, I don't remember.
That's a normal science fiction term or not, I don't know. In this world, that means getting thrown out the airlock.
Yeah, so this guy got spaced. Right when she was almost desperate enough to bang on the locker to remind her captors that she's still there.
Yes, but she thought twice about it and didn't bang.
I wouldn't have banged either if I heard a guy get spaced. I'd be
like, I would think I'm next.
That person that just did that to that guy that I know, I don't want him to know that I'm here. I don't want to remind him.
Right.
Or her. This is an egalitarian space. Also, I'll just point that out. There are as many women as there are men in space at this point. Like, we already see that. So she does not hear any movement after 7 days. So she waits an entire day, and then she starts kicking and kicking and kicking, and eventually she busts out of a locker.
Yeah.
And she goes to explore the ship, and there's nobody. There's nobody on the entire deck.
Backtrack for a second. I think she also thinks about, because even from her perspective, she doesn't know what is going on, who these people are, She's figuring, I think, pirates, but sending people through this tube of like mylar or something, she said.
It was really thin, and they had no spacesuits, so it was totally risky. Which means
so
they do not care if these people live or die.
Right, which also confuses her, because why even bother them? But so she kicks her way out.
Yeah.
Not having stretch, so she cramps up immediately. It hurts. I mean, obviously it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
How is it even possible that she kicks it open?
Fiction.
Yeah. It's a little unbelievable.
Well, think about the kind of locker you have in a high school gym. Because that's what it has to be.
I guess so. I mean, I guess I'm thinking of more like a room on the ship, like a closet or something, like a storage room. But no, it's described as a locker.
Yeah, it's just a locker.
So a unit inside of a room, maybe, or something like that.
Definitely, probably. Okay, so imagine
much easier.
Imagine an entry chamber. So she's right next to the airlock, right?
Yeah.
And tell me that you wouldn't design spaceships with more than one, because I would. But she's right next to the airlock. There would be an antechamber room of sorts where people get dressed, take off their gear, put it away, store it, etc. Yeah. She's in a locker in that room.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So when she busts out, she can see the whole deck. I don't know how big it is. It's not a huge ship, but there's nobody on it. And so she starts exploring the ship, and there's no sounds. She comes out ready for a fight, and there's nobody.
Yeah, there's no even dead bodies or anything. Like, it's not like anything bad happened on the ship to where everyone, like, the air went away or anything. There's air, obviously.
Yep, it's just quiet. No. Eventually, she does find signs of a struggle, and I don't remember where that was. And it's not really that important. But the long story short is, it's not until she gets to engineering, the door's been locked from the inside, and it's not a radiation leak. She doesn't know what it is, but there are no alarms.
That might be where the signs of struggle were, because I think it was like a trail of blood that went to that room or something.
The trail, the signs of struggle led to engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why. But she's also convinced that nobody left the ship, because apparently she was at the only airlock. Yeah, the only person to leave the ship got spaced.
Right. And then all of a sudden everyone just like disappeared, I guess.
Right.
At least from hers and our perspective.
That's pretty much where...
No.
I'm not saying this is over, but there's not much else to learn before she opens that door. Am I wrong?
Oh, no. No. Because again, we were kind of all in the dark, as Julie was.
It's only 5 pages,
Yeah, it's short.
It's a really short prologue, as it should be. And okay, so she gets that door open by cutting it open.
It works a long time at it. It sounds like
she's 4 hours.
Yeah, and she's got to pry it open once she even gets all the mechanisms and gears and gears.
The hydraulics get busted when she cuts it, and so she has to pry it open. And inside there's some kind of fleshy substance covering the core.
Well, but it looks muddy at first to her, like a muddy in color and in texture, I guess. But then she gets closer and it's more fleshy.
Yeah, and then she realizes that it's Akira. I mean, come on, am I wrong?
No, I didn't. When I pictured it, when I visualized it happening, it was very much cartoonish in my head.
Yeah, South Park.
Kind of South Park, but yeah, I guess some Akira in there as well.
Trapper keeper. All right, it is Akira. It's this mound of flesh, huge mound of flesh covering the reactor in that room, and there's this tiny little head that she says in relation,
not bigger than like a pinky finger.
Yeah, in relation to the whole mass, the head of this human being was the size of like a stubbed toe or something. It was just a tiny little thing, and it's the captain's head, and he's saying, "Help me."
Yeah, and so this mass is covering everything in that room, all the panels, and
well, now she knows what happened to everybody.
They all got absorbed by.
They all got turned into this blob. Yeah, exactly. So Akira. All right, so when you read this prologue, how'd you feel about it? Did you think it did a good job? Did it lure you in? Did it suck you in? Did it make you want to read more? Like what?
Yeah, I thought it was fine. It was short, which is good. It ends on a really strange hook. You're like, what the F?
Okay. And you would keep reading based on this?
Yeah, I would, because it's mysterious. And that's always
you want to know what happened. Why?
Yeah. That's always a hook for me. Just personally, I do like a little mystery.
You're
So
a human being, Jill. Everybody does.
yeah. But
everybody wants to know what happened. That's crazy.
Yeah. So I guess I'm easy in that way.
This is my second reading. So the first time I read this book, I had no problems with this scene at all, but obviously I'm reading it with a little bit more analysis in mind, a little bit more critically this time around. And I would say there's nothing new under the sun in this prologue. I've seen every single piece of this prologue elsewhere in another guise, some other way. So it doesn't lure me in that same way. And like, I don't care.
I feel ya.
I don't care about Akira. And I don't care about Julie. Like, there's nothing about her character or any of the people that we read that I was like, yeah, I like you. She's a fighter. I'll give her that. And she did a little bit of ass kicking when she got stuffed into that closet.
That's true. We didn't mention that. She got in some blows before they knocked her out and shoved her.
She didn't want to get raped.
Yeah.
So she fought back and she got shoved into the closet.
Yeah.
But okay, so here's a problem with that theory. She described them as armored. Well, actually, she doesn't do the describing. This is not from her perspective. This is from some kind of like omniscient perspective. They describe these people, that the captors, as armored. And that's the only way they're ever described. And at some point in time, they tried to take her clothes off, and that's when she started fighting back.
So, and let's just say this. She assumed she was going to be sexually assaulted.
Yes.
Maybe that wasn't the purpose.
Well, maybe. And if they're in their armor, I would say it's not the purpose.
Right, because that would be rather difficult.
But if somebody tried to take my clothes off, I'd probably want to fight back too.
Oh, definitely. And I'd probably think the exact same thing she thought.
And
but
she's equipped for it. She knows jujitsu, 5 years worth of jujitsu in
not
zero G.
Jujitsu, zero G.
Yeah. So she did some butt kicking. But then I ask you again, how much ass kicking can you really do against an armored foe?
Not much.
I would say none.
You'd probably just break your hands.
She thought she was winning, but they were in armor.
Yeah, they're
never described as men or women. They don't take their suits off. There's none of that.
Vague entities.
Yeah, so I wasn't that impressed with the prologue.
Okay.
Not that impressed. So let's see. Let's just go really quickly over the stuff that we did learn from the prologue that might be beneficial to people listening.
Yep.
We know about Julie Mao and her combat skills.
Well, we don't know her last name yet, but yes.
Okay, whatever. I really don't think that matters.
It doesn't.
All right, so we know that Julie and the entire crew that were just captured were OPA trained. We don't know what that means, though.
No.
We know that Dave, the engineer, got tossed out an airlock.
The captain was Captain Darren.
Yeah, because his Captain Darren's head spoke.
His head, which was as big as a pinky toe or whatever.
In relation, yeah. Yeah, no one left the ship, and Akira lives in the engineering room. That's what we know.
Yes.
It reads really well, though. I mean, as much as none of it's new to me. Yeah. It reads real nicely. It goes smooth. Nothing really drew me out, so I was pretty pleased with it as it served its function. And I obviously read on. I don't
necessarily disagree with you about Julie. I don't think they gave us too much to necessarily like her. I think the jujitsu stuff was meant to give her a little sass and...
Yeah, well, everybody likes a fighter, right? Nobody likes somebody that's just cows up. Remember how they described the captain just like put his hands up and like rolled up like a dog?
Exactly. We didn't mention that.
Julie didn't go along with it.
Right.
So we're supposed to like her based on that.
Yes.
And I don't. That's not enough for me.
Gotcha. But I think that those were the bits meant to make us at least be on her side, I guess.
Well, I mean, I am on her side. Like, what's happening to them is not correct. It's wrong. Like piracy, being kidnapped, whatever the reasoning, it's not. They're not the bad guys here.
Right.
The bad guys took them off their ship and turned them into Akira. Those are the bad guys. All right, moving on.
Chapter 1, Holden.
A colony ship that has been converted into an ice hauler is returning from the rings of Saturn to Ceres in the asteroid belt when they pick up a distress beacon.
Short and sweet.
Yeah, that's the context. I want to do that for every chapter.
That's great.
Give you a little piece of context, and then we can discuss. All right, so what did we learn in chapter 1?
Well, like you were saying in the prologue, I think this chapter sets up more or better that space travel is normal.
It's mundane at this point.
It starts off immediately with telling us about Solomon Epstein, who invented the Epstein drive.
Yeah.
Makes it possible to travel to the outer space.
Yeah, they said it gave us the solar system. It didn't give us the stars, but it gave us the solar system.
Right.
Before the Epstein drive, which was 150 years ago, humans had settled on Mars and the moon, and obviously Earth. But I don't think they'd gone any further than that. And then the Epstein drive 150 years ago comes along, and then they settled the belt. Then they settled Saturn. Then they the moons of Saturn, the moons of Jupiter. Mm-hmm. And I think Uranus?
One moon of Uranus holds 5,000.
All right. So the distribution of humans as it stands when the story begins, there are just under 20 million people on the moons of Saturn. There are about 45 million people on the moons of Jupiter. There are more than 50 million people in the belt. And there are 5,000 around one of the moons of Uranus.
Yes.
And then the populations of Earth, Mars, and Luna are not given to us.
Right.
It's just a contextual, informational thing.
But if we even think about it logically, there's probably still billions of people on Earth, right? Wouldn't you think?
I would assume so, yeah. I would assume so, yeah.
Humans are, I guess we can say, thriving in this world. We're
spreading out.
Spreading, exactly, like a disease.
Well, when they were asked, when the authors were asked about their book, they said that they wanted to write a book that takes place kind of in between where most science fiction happens. A lot of science fiction's happening right now and just after right now, like the very near future, or really far into the future. Like Alastair Reynolds writes stuff that takes place thousands of years into the future. And they wanted to write stories where we're just getting spread out. Mm-hmm. We're spreading out into the expanse. And I think that's a good choice, personally. They also said that one of their main influences was Frederick Pohl's book Gateway, which is similarly, it takes place in a similar future, enough into the future that there's a little bit of space travel, but we're not widespread yet. Mm-hmm. But anyway, let's talk about chapter 1.
Let's do it.
All right, so this really is a chapter that introduces the crew, a number of the crew of the ship Canterbury. It talks about what they're up to. They're hauling ice. We know that they're on their way back from the rings of Saturn, which is past the orbit of Jupiter. They're inside that on their way back when they get that distress signal. And it's a big ship, but apparently there's only like 50 people on it. And they hold the ice inside the ship.
Well, so they described the ship as it used to be, it's this huge ship, and it used to have different environmental bubbles because it transported people.
It was a colony ship.
Colony ships transporting people to the different moons and different places.
Yeah.
They're terraforming and populating and whatnot.
Yeah.
And we don't really get an explanation, but this is an old ship, and now it's an ice hauler ship.
Yeah, it's over 100 years old.
So I guess it's got a lot of space for ice.
I guess so. It just seems to me that if you were hauling ice, you wouldn't want to put it inside something. You would leave it outside. And
well, also it seemed like it would take a lot of energy to keep it cold inside. Oh, no?
When human beings used to go up to the Arctic and cut ice, well, they did it in the Great Lakes, I think is where they did it. They would cut ice out of the Great Lakes, put it on ships, and send it down to the tropics, right? Before refrigerated air, before you could make ice.
Yeah.
And you essentially would lose half the volume of ice on the trip. And it took a long time. It wasn't quick.
Yeah.
It was still valuable enough. And don't forget, it's like space, right? Space is cold. They'll be fine. They'll be fine. But I would just leave it outside.
It's probably not, like, I'm visualizing it like Futurama or something. Like they're hauling some sort of, package behind the ship. And that probably isn't realistic.
Putting it inside the ship is foolish.
Because you're traveling fast. Later on in this book, we'll get to it, but they describe you don't stop in space. You're matching
Relative speed.
orbit and relative speed of whatever you're trying to dock onto or whatever.
Right, but you also don't stop and start fast.
Well, sometimes you do.
You can't. It's impossible. It's impossible. I mean, you can try. It took them 2 days to slow down enough to match orbit with the scopuli.
I would imagine having the ice outside and being hauled, that just mathematically, that adds a different sort of, I don't know the terms, but something, velocity or whatever, to how they slow down or stop or maneuver the ship. We're getting a little too technical here.
Let's be honest. In reality, when this does become a job, it's going to be done by robots. It's not going to be done by people.
Right. Probably, though.
No people hauling ice around in the solar system.
This is definitely the alien view of space. Space truckers. Right.
Yeah, where you got blue collar workers in space.
Yeah.
Which I like the idea. I don't think it's realistic at all.
Do you think so? You think like every ship will be just piloted by robots?
You don't even need a ship. You want to move ice from Jupiter or from Saturn's rings to the inner solar system to the asteroid belt. You don't need a ship. You just strap an engine on.
How are we going to live, Lewell? How will we live?
We will live in comfort and relative ease on space stations and HABs.
Or in holes like on Ceres.
Okay, so there's a problem there as well. Like,
we should probably wait. I shouldn't have even brought that up.
Probably not.
Let's talk about Holden.
Let's talk about chapter 1.
So Holden is moving. We're getting off on a lot of tangents here today.
Well, it's fine. Whatever.
But yeah, so it describes the Epstein drive, space travel. It's easy. Humans are all over the place. And Holden, who's the executive officer, the rank below captain, is moving through the ship. Who do we meet first?
I don't remember.
Naomi Nagata first. And this is where I will mention I have to try to visualize Naomi Nagata a little bit different than she's portrayed in the show. Because I want to say in the show, she may be shorter than Holden.
She is supposed to be 6.25 feet. No, 2.25 meters.
And really thin, and they're lanky.
Yeah, so she's more than 6 feet.
She's a belter. She's from the belt, which is not Earth or Mars. It's an asteroid belt.
Which is where Ceres orbits, which is past the orbit of Mars, but it's before the orbit of Jupiter by quite a bit.
So people born out there are called belters. They're born in 0G. They are given all sorts of chemical cocktails when they're born to make sure their muscles and bones grow. But
That's definitely true. I mean, that would definitely have to happen.
Yeah.
Genetic engineering or something.
But they're real long and lanky because of it as well.
No gravity well. Yeah.
No gravity.
It's funny. When they describe humans from Earth as being short and stocky, it's like, no, technically it's just like us, right?
Yeah.
We're not short and stocky. We grew up in a gravity well dealing with high gravity.
But that is what those people think of Earthers. And we'll get to that later on even too, in more Miller chapters.
It's fun. I really enjoy thinking about that. All right. So we're basically introduced to the Star Trek crew here.
Yes.
Right? This is an extremely diverse crew with men and women of all different races and nationalities. You've even got a guy that's had his arm cut off and who's like, it's not a big deal. I can get along just fine. So he's going
to get a prosthetic.
He is going to get a prosthetic.
Because he has a long enough contract. But they don't say insurance, but he's not going to be able to regrow an arm, which is possible.
He doesn't want to.
But he doesn't want to anyway, because that's the Earth Jello, or like Earthers Jello they give you.
You know, that stuff supposedly exists.
Really?
Yeah, they refer to it as pixie dust, and it is really, really unpolitically correct to even talk about the stuff, whether or not it exists. Well, because the guy that supposedly found out about it did all of this experimentation on dogs. And so it's animal experimentation that discovered it. He was experimenting on dogs that had heart problems, and he was cutting out pieces of their own intestine to replace the parts of the heart that were damaged. And when the dogs eventually died, he did autopsies on them and found that their hearts had completely regrown.
Oh, wow.
He didn't know why. He started looking into the cells that were in the intestines and found that it's like stem cells in there. They're undifferentiated cells, and they will regrow whatever they need to.
Wow.
So that technology is already started to be researched. But again, it's not PC to even talk about it.
Fine.
Go ahead. Do it. Do whatever you want. As far as I'm concerned, if you can find a way to regrow a limb, do it. All right, so we've got the Star Trek crew.
Yeah, so we meet Naomi Nagata, the Belter. She's the chief engineer of the Canterbury.
Yep.
She's got her right-hand man, Amos.
Yep.
Amos Burton.
He calls her boss. That's awesome.
Boss. And Holden describes him as his one and only boss is Naomi.
Yeah.
He really doesn't have the same sort of respect for the captain or Holden that he has for Naomi.
It could be a package deal where they hired what is she? She's a chief engineer?
Yeah.
It could be a package deal where they hired a chief engineer and he came with her.
Right.
She may actually be his boss for all we know.
Yeah, that's probably true. And mentally that's how he feels as well. But that's how he's described.
Yep.
We get Shed Garvey, the medical tech.
Right.
Do we get a lot of explanation on who he is? I don't really remember much about him, to be honest.
Okay, so the only things I really remember about him is him picking the maggots off of Taj's arm.
Yeah.
They're trying to control the infection, not get rid of it, and all this kind of stuff. That's all I remember. He's the medic.
The only character stuff we get with him is like he's kind of embarrassed by Taj's dirty talk, I guess.
Taj talks him into explaining to Holden what the dirty talk is. And so he does, and then he blushes about it.
To make Shed be embarrassed about it.
He's a doctor. He's not embarrassed by body stuff. Give me a break.
I'm just trying to pull any character out of this guy that I can, because honestly,
I get you.
We didn't get much. Ade, Holden's not girlfriend.
No, not girlfriend. She's insistent on that point.
They are dating, I guess, seeing each other, having sex
together. Yeah, they're sleeping together, and that's it.
He wants more. She absolutely does not want more.
Little role reversal.
She's Nigerian.
She got her money out of the country. I'm very happy for her. I wonder who helped her.
What is Ade's position? She's
a navigator.
Okay. She's in like the engine room or something.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. Anyway, I was confused about what she exactly did, but I'm
pretty sure she's the navigator. She's let's put it in Star Trek terms. When Captain says, punch it, she's the one that punches it.
Okay. She hits that button.
She hits that button, lays in the coursework, and etc.
It's probably much more complicated than that.
Yeah, I'm sure. I hope it is, but at the same time, computers should be doing most of this work.
Yeah.
It should not be human beings with
You know what, though? But if you are okay, here's the thing, though. You're in space, and they'll get to this a little... Actually, maybe it's in this chapter, where it's kind of like an unwritten law. Or actually, it is the law. But whether it gets followed... When you're out there all alone, you have to answer a distress signal because there's nothing out there. It's all you have is each other and karma. And so going back to what I was saying, if you're out there, you need humans that are going to be able to, what if something breaks and you're just out there? You need humans I think some things may have to be more mechanical than you think.
I think you underestimate the ability of machines to do people's work greatly. And I think you overestimate the abilities of human beings greatly.
Possibly. But there's this, I was just reading this. I don't know. I think it's maybe in our government that there's one of our nuclear computers or whatever is still like an old IBM from the 70s because you basically can't hack it. So like, why change it? Sort of thing. Like they've never updated it because it would just be dangerous.
Yeah. No,
I just found that interesting.
That is smart. For the most part, this stuff's going to be done by computers. And yeah, people might need to be there for certain aspects of it, but you don't enjoy stories that are written about robots and computers.
No, not at all.
Let's talk about how we know these are the good guys.
Okay.
Are we under the impression that these are good guys? These are the good guys. These are our story guys, right? And it's not just that we're having a story about them. there are other things too.
Well, this is Holden's chapter. Jim Holden, by the way, his first name's Jim. His last name is Holden. He's called to the bridge specifically to be that moral voice, to be that good guy voice, and he makes that. You're
talking about the fact that they've gotten the distress signal,
and they're going to go.
They're going to stop because it's the law.
Exactly, and also it's the right thing to do.
It is the right thing to do, to render aid to someone in distress.
Right. Again, if it was you would hope somebody else would stop as well. Because again, you guys are all out there all alone for the most part in space.
Yeah. Very hostile environment.
Based off it being Jim Holden's chapter, and he is there for that moral compass because the captain wants to cover his ass and have the crew still like him and think that he's on their side. Like, he doesn't want to do it either, but
Yes, there's a little snippet in there that I think puts it kind of into good focus, and that is that by stopping, it's going to eat into their profits, because I guess they're on a time schedule, and if they slow down, they make less money.
Yeah.
If they stop, they're going to make less money.
Yes.
And so they're putting the well-being of human beings other than themselves above profits.
Right.
So
hard
to argue that they aren't the good guys.
Right. But then Holden, yes, true. And then Holden, just to smooth things over to everyone, was like, well, there might be some salvage on the ship as well.
When Ade and Holden are having their I don't want to be your girlfriend conversation.
Yeah.
Ade points out that everybody on the ship either messed up at their last gig or they're just wildly unqualified to be in space.
Right. I forgot about that.
So this is a crew of misfits.
Yes.
It's not just, this is not actually the crew of the Enterprise.
No.
Everybody's the best and the brightest. These are people who are relegated to hauling ice because they messed up or they're no good.
Yeah.
Or they're just getting started. Like, this maybe is where you start your career in space as a blue-collar worker in outer space?
Possibly. She didn't make any mention of that, but it could be true.
Well, she said she was temporary. She's just going on another run or two, and then she was done. Holden has been there for 5 years, and he's comfortable, and that was one of her criticisms of him.
I guess it was a criticism. She was just kind of stating the facts that, hey, I'm going to be gone. You're going to be here. Why are we making this serious?
Right. But, I mean, in a way, he's XO. You know, the next step up for him is to captain his own ship. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe he's saving money to buy a new ship right now.
Could be, but we have no idea.
We don't know. We don't really know. Also, in that same scene, I did not enjoy the dialogue. It felt very forced. And, like, I understand what's going on, that it's the authors are trying to show that space is egalitarian, that men are equal to women, that everybody's welcome in space, and that is the future I want. That is the future that I foresee as well. But the dialogue between, like, you don't strengthen a female character by making male characters weak. You just make female characters strong.
Do you think that him wanting her as a girlfriend makes him weak?
Yes. He wants something that she does. She has the power in that situation. They're both sleeping together. No big deal. On that regard, they're equal, right? But he wants something that she won't give him. So she has the power.
Okay.
Right. That's just the way that dynamic works. It's not saying that she's better or he's worse or whatever, but that's the power dynamic there, is that she's not giving him what he wants. Therefore, she has the power.
But you're saying no matter what, if someone has power, the other one's automatically weaker. So then
No. It's just the way that they wrote him. They wrote him as being weak.
I'm not sure 100%.
Here's my example, okay? When she says, "You're comfortable here," and her eyes were less kind now. She bit her lip. She looked down at the screen. She looked up, and he responds, "I didn't deserve that," he said.
Well, maybe that's just Holden.
No, that's not how people talk, first of all. And that's just a weak response. It's a weak response. A strong response would be him getting angry, defensive, stalking out.
You know, I hate even going here, but God, do I agree with you? I mean, I might agree with you, because this line from Jim is, I wasn't talking about sex, a little food, conversation.
Yes.
Like, all right, dude.
Yeah, more stuff like that. Exactly. Yeah. That's weak. That's weak
Especially
dialogue.
After she's made it 100% clear that she wants none of that.
Yes.
So then to even then come back at it makes his character weak. Yeah, I don't disagree.
So I don't love Holden already.
Interesting.
I don't love him. The person that I liked immediately was Nagata.
Mm-hmm.
Because what is it? He snaps her a sarcastic salute, and she snorts and kind of walks out. And like she's obviously arrogant. She knows what she's doing. She's good at her job, and she's able to fix things with no budget, no parts. She's able to rig stuff together if she needs to. We get all that information in like very, very little detail, and it's really, really good. And I liked her immediately.
But also she still does have respect that he's her superior, though. I think
well, she's not being disrespectful. That's not the point.
That's what I mean. I'm saying she can do all that and knows her worth.
She's an engineer. She doesn't care about running the ship.
Right.
She doesn't care.
Yeah.
She doesn't need to care. I liked her immediately. I agree with you completely. Shed means nothing to me at this point.
Oh, he's like pointless in my mind.
No information whatsoever. The guy that was getting his arm worked on, Paj.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about the guy.
I started to care, and then I realized this is where the show kind of creeped in for me. It was like, I don't need to care about Paj.
Don't go there.
I know. I'm admitting to that.
Okay, so who else did we encounter? Let's see. Rebecca Byers, who I also liked immediately. Because
and so is Holden.
The rumor is, okay, that's fair, and that's a good technique in my opinion, because we're supposed to like Holden. So if Holden likes somebody, we're supposed to follow suit, right?
I guess, sure.
It's just a technique. It's not whatever. It doesn't matter.
I'm just trying to be contrary. That's how I work.
I got you.
Even if maybe they're trying to fool us. I don't know. Maybe you never know.
Well, I mean, okay, whatever. We met Captain McDowell, who was the most fleshed out of all the characters as far as I'm concerned, but I don't think that happens right away. But Rebecca Byers, the rumor is she killed her ex-husband.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And I just love that. Like she's on the run. The cops got her gun. She killed her ex-husband, and here she is on the ship.
Back to the crew of misfits.
Yes, the crew of misfits. Yeah, no, I liked her immediately as well. But the only character that I really liked straight out the gate was the engineer, Nagata.
Yes.
All right, so the purpose of that chapter was to introduce us to the crew and to give us a lot of context for the type of world that we're seeing. Space travel is mundane. People have these jobs. They're hauling ice. It's not a big deal. That's where we're at.
Yes. Well, and the big plot point is it ends with the emergency signal from the scopuli.
All right. I would say, though, that covers chapter 1 fairly well, don't you?
Yeah. I think we talked about everything.
All right. Chapter 2, Miller.
Yes.
Miller time. All right. I am extremely partial to hard-boiled detectives, noir fiction, not the movies so much, but I like crime fiction. I like mysteries. I like that stuff a lot. And so stuff's right up my alley. Whereas space opera, not as much. Right? I don't love space opera. I love hard-boiled detective stories. And that's kind of what we've got with these chapters. The Miller story, detective story. And he is a detective. And I think we learned that right away. Detective Miller.
Yeah. First line.
All right. We begin the Miller story on the asteroid Ceres, which again is in the belt. It's the most major body in the belt, and it is home in this case to 6 million people, and operated like any big port city that you and I might be expected to know. Only difference being that it is in orbit in the belt. We're dropped into this chapter in the midst of an interview that's taking place in Belter vernacular, conducted by Detective Miller. All right.
Perfect.
He's interviewing, I think, what he referred to as a glitz whore. Is that right?
Oh, man. I'm looking right now.
It's not in the beginning. It doesn't describe her that way in the beginning. It's quite a bit later.
I don't remember.
She's a sex worker, regardless. And the interview is taking place in her hole, which is the apartment that she lives in, essentially. And they're called holes because they're dug out of Ceres, body of Ceres, the asteroid. So straight away, we've got this conversation going on between the detective and this sex worker, and it's kind of hard to understand. Did you agree that it was difficult?
Very hard to understand.
And that's because it's taking place in the vernacular. And if you think about it, we're at least 300 years into our future. So the language is going to change. I mean, just think about when Shakespeare was writing.
Yeah.
And the language then versus the language now. So there's going to be some language shift.
Even language from, if you watch old, like right when television and movies first started, or if you watch like really old speeches from back in the day, you know that New York style of talk that was like, oh, baby, like way back in the 20s.
Yeah, when talkies first came around.
Did talk like that.
Yeah.
And as our speech just changes, it's very interesting. There are a few things that are translated for us, but not much. I mean, Miller explains it after the fact, but
it was done real well. He does explain it after the fact, but it's handled pretty well. But the long and short of it is a low-life hustler that had been collecting money for the Golden Bough Society has gone missing.
Yes.
And this is not an isolated case. Like, something's going on with the crime families on Ceres, and it's a wealthy place. They said that more wealth passes through Ceres than any other place in the history of human society, because they've got platinum, titanium, all of these materials from all over the solar system.
Like everything passes through there.
Everything passes through Ceres and is redistributed outwards.
Yes.
So with wealth comes crime.
Of course.
So there are crime families on Ceres.
And that is the Golden Bough. What was it? Golden Bough Society. Yeah, they're organized crime.
They're one of the organized crime families. And somebody has just made one of their money collectors disappear. And that is what Miller is investigating.
And what's weird is, if I'm remembering correctly, is they don't seem to care.
They're not doing anything about it. They probably care. They probably care a lot. But
but they're not retaliating for some reason, and Miller's confused by that.
Sure. Well, I mean, so he's the station detective. He's a station detective. His partner Havelock is with him. What?
Assigned to the port. It's a security force, actually. Like, they're not police per se. I mean, they are police.
They're acting as police. They're a private security force. It's Star Helix Security.
Right. And there's more than one security force, I believe, on Ceres. They're assigned to the port areas, or at least Miller is.
I think they're
kind of hard to...
They're Ceres Station. They were contracted by the governor.
Okay.
So there are other security agencies like Protogen.
Right.
Star Helix is security for Ceres Station.
Okay.
And they're employed by the governor, which is a conflict of interest on a grand scale, if you think about it. The governor controls the police. That's a bad move. There's some kind of power shift going on among the crime families. Something's going on, and Miller and Havelock have been assigned to kind of investigate what's going on, or at least that's the assumption.
Havelock is his partner. I don't know if we mentioned that yet.
Havelock is his partner, and Havelock is from Earth.
Yes.
But he's worked a lot on Mars and out in the belt elsewhere. I think on Luna, too. He's worked a lot. He didn't work on Earth at all.
Right.
He's been a cop in space.
He was just born there, right?
Yeah, and so he's kind of looked down upon because he is from a gravity well.
Kind of. We'll get to that later, but there's definitely racial tensions, so to speak.
But Havelock offers us the perspective of somebody from the inner planets, and his partner Miller, who we follow throughout this chapter, is giving us the perspective of somebody who was born outside of the gravity wells of the inner solar system.
Yes.
So we have these two. So a lot of times Miller will explain what's going on to Havelock, and Havelock will ask questions, and that allows the author to give us the information that they want to give us by having that little bit of a conflict between.
I think it's done well.
No, it is. It really is.
And during this particular interview, Havelock is sitting back listening, because I think he probably doesn't even know what the heck they're saying, at least half of it.
Oh, he admits as much. He certainly couldn't converse to this. Think about well, what he says is, did you have fun? You know, and Miller's like, that wasn't a conversation intended to keep the copper out or the earther out. That was a conversation spoken in vernacular that's intended to keep affluent people out.
Right.
It's like the poor.
It's like a Cockney talk.
But Miller understands that. Miller was born on Ceres station. He's familiar with the ways of speaking on Ceres. So he has a better rapport with the people of Ceres than Havelock ever could.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I don't remember if they mentioned how long he's worked as a cop. I'm not sure if that's mentioned, but it's got to be a while. Miller, yeah.
I think they did. I don't remember, though. I want to say it was more than 20 years.
Yeah, but I mean, he's a detective, and so he's been at this a while.
Yeah, unlike television in our age, people do not become detectives in their 20s.
Right. You don't just do that.
Oh, Jesus. It's ridiculous. This is a tangent, I admit it, but I am so sick of television where you have young, beautiful people doing jobs that literally take an entire career to attain, you know?
Yeah, I agree with you, but also for me, it's just that it's so boring. Like, it's boring for me.
Everybody looks the same.
They all look the same.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Ugh.
I can't stand it. I want some character.
Yeah, me too.
I want some character in my characters, please.
Character actors.
All right. So we learn what we learn as far as this guy going missing from this woman.
Right. And then
Havelock and Miller have a conversation on the way back to the station that kind of explains everything to us.
Yeah.
And
I don't think the details are super important for us to go over. It's just
not those. No, yeah. I agree.
I think what we mentioned is fine. The organized crime stuff.
Right. So when they get back to the station, Miller is called into his captain's office. I think her name is Shadidi.
Shadid. Yeah, there's only one I.
Okay, so Captain Shadid calls Miller, not Havelock, into her office.
Yes.
And we kind of start getting the sense that Shadid and other Belters are a bit racist against Earthers and people from the inner planets.
And it says she could never quite overcome her prejudice against inner planet origins.
Yeah,
or Havelock's inner planet origins.
Right, and she's not really hiding it.
No.
So we'll talk about that in just a second.
Yeah.
But essentially, when she calls him into the office, it is to give him an assignment, an additional assignment on top of the work he's already doing. And it's a kidnapping job where he's supposed to go and track down this girl named Julie Mao.
Mm-hmm.
We already met in the prologue.
Yes.
And we learn a little bit about her.
Yeah, she's the daughter of a rich family. And this guy, the names of the mom is Ariadne and the dad is Jules Pierre Mao. Yeah, so they're obviously throwing weight and money around to get their
daughter back.
Job done. They make it sound like she's a little wild. I don't even know if
they described her as a black sheep who went off to university and got in with the wrong crowd.
Right.
And that wrong crowd would be the feeder groups that lead into the OPA, which is the Outer Planet Alliance, which is kind of like a rebel group, terrorist group,
looking out for Belter interests.
Yes. Because they're not independent.
Right.
They're still under the rule of other people.
Right. And she had a racing, is it pronounced penis?
Pinnacle? Penis. She had a racing penis.
Penis. I thought it was ACCE. There's an L at the end?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. A racing pinnacle.
Well, just look at the word. Let's
I
make
thought
sure.
I did.
I hope that you didn't.
Whatever. He just thinks she's some rich kid that he's got to kidnap and bring to mommy and daddy.
We know better already. We know that she's been kidnapped and shoved into
we know that she is actually in danger, let's say.
Yeah, we know that.
We believe she's in danger.
Her parents don't know. They just want to get her back.
Right. But I think in their minds, they assume she's in danger just by pure association of who she's hanging out with. So, yeah, he gets the assignment and then he goes off to his hole. He goes
right. Home. But not right before that, he has a little bit of shared racism with his boss for bonding purposes.
Yes.
And then he goes off and he goes back to his hole.
Yeah, because he mentions having Havelock around makes him
look good
in people's eyes.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you poor guy, you're stuck with that earther.
Yeah. It seems to be a pretty common thing here in the belt.
Right.
Probably in the rest of our universe.
Solar system.
Solar system.
There's a lot of racism. All right, so this chapter gives us a lot of information that I'm really happy to get. And one of those things is that the problems, social problems that we have now, they just transmit off into the future. And we've seen this before. Like, the world may be becoming more accepting and more tolerant, but it's a slow process. And we're still
always care about themselves.
Yeah, there's a lot of self-interest involved. That's not going to change anytime soon. Humans are not going to suddenly become enlightened tomorrow or in 300 years. It's not going to happen.
No, and it won't happen as a collective consciousness. So that's ridiculous.
Right. So we're getting a lot of these flavor elements for the chapter, showing that problems still exist, and these are the problems of the belt. You know, that the belters feel like they're being taken advantage of, and a organization has arisen.
And you know, they probably are. Let's be real.
Yeah, of course they are.
They're the grunt class. They're the lower class citizens that are.
Even if they're not lower class citizens, think about the American Revolution, right? Our founding fathers in America were not poor. They were not.
No.
They were the wealthiest of their era in America.
They knew how to read and write, for goodness sakes.
Jill, they were very wealthy.
I know. I was being funny.
They're Plutarchs, essentially. So there were going to be Plutarchs on series, but those people are going to want their independence too. And it is suggested that Miller doesn't really know how Shadid will come down. She's private security for Ceres, but he doesn't really know if she's pro-OPA or not. And he suspects it's possible. Maybe she is. Maybe the governor is pro-OPA.
Yeah, I think that comes up in a later chapter, but yeah.
Well, we don't really get a good sense of Havelock, I don't think, in this chapter, but we do get a pretty good sense of Miller. And we come to understand one thing, that Shadid in her office, there's this scent of cinnamon and coffee.
Yeah.
And he said that if he had to describe her, it would be artificial coloring.
Yes, coloration.
She's not represented by, you can't trust what you're seeing as an honest representation of what you're getting from the woman.
Yeah, everything is a front.
And he says that Havelock's apartment smells like baked bread.
Which a lot of Earthers...
Everybody uses this perfuming.
Yeah.
They want the smell. But his hole, do you remember what it smelled like?
It was just the smell of the station that he works at, I think. Just antiseptic and sweat and everyone's recycled pee and sweat and tears and breath. Yeah.
It's the smell of the station, and that's the way he likes it. He wants the reality of what there is.
Yes.
And that's a telling character trait, right? He's not satisfied. He wants to know what's underneath. He wants the real input. And I think that's a good quality in a detective. And I think it's a nice, subtle way of showing us a lot of his character traits.
He tries not to, it gets mentioned in his next chapter, the chapter after. He tries not to put any emotion into the facts that he's looking at. He just wants to know, he just wants to put the pieces together.
Yeah, he wants to see true.
It's not an emotional thing. All facts.
He's a little bit cynical. One of the other things that we learn is that Ceres doesn't really have laws. They have police, essentially. He talks about how people will get spaced for doing the wrong thing because it's justified. So they punish people based on whether or not it's justified, not necessarily whether or not they broke the law. But it's pretty clear that the policing on the station, you don't necessarily get a trial. Right.
It's not super clear, but yeah.
We also learned that Miller has an ex-wife.
Yes, I was just going to mention that.
Which is a trope of the genre. All good detectives are divorced.
Divorced, alone, sad, depressed, cynical.
They're usually drinking and smoking, but
he doesn't seem to have any children though, so that's probably a bonus, at least as far as the world is concerned.
No, he says later on that we don't.
The word right here, talented pinnace pilot, Pinnace. Page
where?
Bottom of page 25, the last paragraph, Juliet Andromeda Mao. He read through her work history. Talented pinnace pilot. So, what do you have to say now?
I'm wrong?
Yeah. Let's make sure that stays in the podcast.
Well, let's make sure that's not a typo, too.
Okay, well, I'm looking up pinnace right now, which I should have done.
Yeah, see about pronunciation too.
Pinnace, a small boat with sails or oars forming part of the equipment of a warship or large vessel.
How do you pronounce it?
Pinnace. Just how I pronounced it. Pinnace. Pinnace.
Pinnace. Okay, my bad. I always put an L in there because it just made sense to me. Pinnacle. Pinnace.
Pinnace. Pinnacle is a different word.
No, I know that it's a different word, Jill. I'm aware of that.
I'm not sure you.
My bad. I misread that. I'm still going to pronounce it penis pilot.
I love how you're such a jerk about it. Pinnace.
Hey, look, I'm sorry.
Pinnacle. What are you talking about?
I apologize, Jill.
You're forgiven.
I apologize that I was wrong. I misread that. Nevertheless, I still like pinnacle better than penis.
Anyway.
So do you have anything that you want to add? I'm sorry. Is there something you would like to add about chapter 2, Miller's first chapter?
Yes. Well, just back to the chapter ends with Miller. He's thinking about Julie, looking through the files, but he's still thinking about the organized crime stuff. And he's like, this thing with Julie Mao, it was a sideshow. That's his thoughts at this moment.
Yes.
That's what he's thinking about.
And I think that makes really good sense. What does he care about some rich kid?
Exactly. What does that have? How is that going to affect life on Ceres?
Yeah.
No, in his mind, it's not going to. But this organized crime stuff, there's obviously something going on. What does it mean?
Yes.
Especially just for the whatever's happening on Ceres, the flow of life on Ceres.
Right. Bigger fish to fry.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
So that's about it, I guess.
Chapter 3, Holden's second chapter. The Canterbury is closing in on the distress beacon, and preparations are being made to take their lander, I guess it's called Knight.
Yes.
To investigate. That's it. I mean, to investigate, period.
Yeah, they're getting ready to investigate the scopuli.
This chapter, I did not like this chapter at all. Like, I'm just going to say that and then explain to you why. And it is that we don't get any real information here. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of like going through the motions of what would happen in preparation for taking an away mission, as it were, to go and investigate a ship. We've all seen it before in space movies. We've read it before. There's nothing new here. Once again, this is just we're going to go do this thing, and this is the procedure that we use to go do that thing.
I don't disagree with you. It's definitely, all the notes I have written down are just kind of curious little things that I found interesting that are actually more about the world than the story, because like you said, we're just getting the crew ready. We do meet a new person though, a new crew member, Alex.
Is it really?
Yes. Are you dyslexic?
I don't know.
I'm being 100% serious right now. You've added an L and you've inverted the L and the E in Alex. What is happening?
I can see it. His name is Alex.
Yes, it is. His name is Alex. He's from Mars. Alex
Kamal, and he talks in a Texas accent.
He talks in a Texas accent because Mars was founded by...
It was settled. The Mariner Valley was settled by East Indians, Chinese, and Texans.
And it's described as the accent being a virus that just kind of takes over.
Yep. Yeah.
Is that true? Some of your drawl comes out sometimes. Just a little bit, though.
It is relatively true. If somebody from the part of Texas where I grew up moves up to Dallas, mm-hmm. they will end up talking with a drawl, even though they didn't have one. Anybody growing up in San Antonio and the environments around there, they don't have an accent.
That's where you grew up?
It's like mine. The accent is like mine. But if you move up to Dallas, they talk a little bit slower, and there might be some of this in there. Mm-hmm. And that is an affectation, but it is contagious.
So that's Alex. And Holden doesn't really like him because he's too... I have the word here. Ebullient.
Yeah, he's talkative and outgoing and noisy, and it gives Holden a headache.
Yeah, Naomi likes it.
But he is the better pilot.
Yes. And so he's just an interesting guy. He's this Indian Martian with a Texas accent who used to be in the Martian Navy.
Yep.
Obviously piloted for the Navy. And he's going to crew this ship, the Knight.
So who's on the mission? It's Naomi and Amos. It's Alex. It's Holden, and it's Shed.
And Shed, the medical guy.
And that's it. And they bring a mech with them, which is like this utilitarian vehicle that they use to cut up salvage. And etc.
Yeah.
Okay, so they go. They fly away. It takes 11 hours round trip or whatever, but they go. They get up close to the Scopuli, which is parked right next to a free-floating asteroid.
Yeah, which is weird in its own right. It had to have been purposefully landed there, or like it seems
it was left
like
there.
There's no way it was an accident.
Yeah, right.
It didn't just end up there.
And there's a hole in the side of the ship.
Yes.
And I think it's Alex says it was Amos says that was a breaching charge.
Yeah, it wasn't shot out from the outside. It was blown out from the inside, right? Somebody putting explosives. Is that what that meant? Did I read that wrong?
I think so. They put a breaching charge on the outside of the ship, and it blew a hole into the ship.
On the outside. Okay. So I had it right, just not the direction. Okay.
And then apparently they crawled in that tiny hole and...
Okay, yeah. And Naomi has to make the hole bigger for them to go in.
Right. So McDowell told them when they left not to be a hero, don't be a cowboy. You see anything odd at all and get out of there because it's risky. Space is risky. Obviously, pirating is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's referred to multiple times already that there are pirates out there and space can be dangerous.
Yep.
So there's a hole in the side of the ship. Nagata cuts a bigger hole and then cools it off, sprays it down, and they go inside. And they start investigating, and they want to find out, like, the core's been shut down.
They're trying to find out if anybody, like, where the signal came from, basically. Like, who sent it, what's going on, but there's nobody around.
Well, Amos has been tasked with pulling out the core, like cutting it out.
Yeah.
And Holden goes to look for the transponder. And when he finds it, it hasn't been activated. There's no distress beacon being activated. So it's like, what? Where's it coming from? And then he sees there's a little box with a battery strapped to it underneath something. And he's like, okay, that is weird.
Wasn't it just sitting on the ground in there or something?
Yep. It just left on the ground underneath.
Out in the open.
Well, they thought that was sufficiently weird. So they scrubbed the mission. We're leaving. As soon as they do that, they get back in the ship and they say they're on their way back, and they get a call from the ship. The captain of the Canterbury says, we have a problem. And that's where the chapter ends.
I think we can at least put 2 and 2 together that whoever this crew of the ship is did not send the emergency signal. Whoever put this black box there sent this emergency signal. So, yeah.
Right. All right. So, like, I underlined like 5 things in this chapter. I took hardly any notes. I just didn't see it as that important.
The certain things I did, like I said, were just kind of funny little whatevers.
Well, the one thing that I noticed was that they were pulling out the computer core, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or trying to. But if you recall from the prologue, this is the same ship that Julie Mao was taken off of.
Correct.
This is the Scopuli. And before they got boarded and taken off of the Scopuli, they scrubbed the computer.
Yes.
So they're trying to pull out this computer drive, the black box essentially, and it's been scrubbed. So even if they get it, they're not going to get good information off of it.
Right.
And we know that as the reader.
Right. I guess a character thing with Holden, he was looking at the night and everything is built, kind of utilitarian. Everything's built for function.
Yeah, no aesthetics.
And he thinks there should be room for aesthetics.
Trust me, if you pay more, you can get some aesthetics thrown onto.
Yeah, probably. I mean, this is an ice hauling rig here.
Well, this is their
a ship within the Canterbury.
Yeah, it's their what is it? How was it described? Do you remember what kind of ship is it?
The Knight?
Atmo capable shuttle.
Okay, so it's a shuttle.
Boring chapter.
Anyway, but yeah, I guess that's it.
I have nothing else to add.
The Canterbury has a problem.
There's a problem with the Cant. Yeah, exactly. And they're on their way back.
Yeah, chapter
4. They found out a little bit of information, and they're on their way back. Chapter 4 is another Miller chapter. We're just going to bounce back and forth. So back on Ceres Station, later the same night, Miller is called to talk Havelock off of a bender that is looking like it might turn violent. So Havelock is down at the Blue Frog, which is this really popular bar that is modeled off of a famous bar in Mumbai.
Yes.
And it has, inside of it, it has artificial air pollution.
Yes.
And the temperature is raised real high because it's supposed to be imitating the environment of Mumbai.
Yeah, it's advertised as a near replica.
Right.
Famous Earth bar in Mumbai.
So the proprietor and Miller go back. They trade information or whatever, and so it's the proprietor that lets Miller know, hey, your partner's down here. Come and get him. It looks like he's about to get into some trouble, so come on down. So yes. Miller heads down, and he goes down as a civilian. He doesn't take the cart. He gets the tube, and he goes down. And
right, I guess police travel in carts.
I think that was more of a distinction. It's true, but I think that's more of a distinction for him.
I'm just explaining the world. Like cops travel around in these carts, I guess, but he's not going to travel down in a cart because this is like personal, not cop business, and he doesn't want to be seen as a cop. So he's taking the public transportation, which is the tube.
Yeah.
No windows.
Right. Well, what's there to look at?
Right.
It's just rock. But Havelock's down in this bar, and it's like 1/3 full of people from the inner planets because of some security force being changed out on Eros or something like that. And apparently Havelock has this tendency to pick fights with other Earthers and Martians.
Yes.
In the hopes that the people in the belt will view him more like one of their own.
Yeah.
Miller's like, dude, it's not going to make Shadid hate you any less.
Well, it should be noted that he's drunk when he's doing this. He's not.
Yeah. I mean, he's in a bar. Come on.
Well, I think that's he still thinks that way, but if he wasn't drunk, he probably wouldn't be doing that stuff. I'm just making that clear.
Well, he got set off by the fact that he's not being included in stuff that's going on. Like he asks Miller, like, what's that super secret mission that you got assigned to today? And he's like, that's what set you off? Dude, it's a kidnap job. It's literally a bullshit job.
Yeah. And it's just going to add stress to my life, dude. Don't worry about it.
But he's thereby able to talk Havelock off of this tendency towards violence, and they go outside, and then they change venues. They go to a cop bar, and then they kind of just sip drinks and actually hang out with other cops. And then
with Havelock laughing along with
he's trying to fit in
anti-Earther jokes. Yeah,
he's trying to fit in, but he's the
best he can,
and he's got fairly thick skin. He's kind of able to handle the jokes and stuff like that. He's just disappointed that it's not getting better. He thought that it would just.
He doesn't get it.
He thought they would take him in.
We kind of talked about it before. Is he's worked all over the place, and he's never seen or experienced any kind of prejudice like this in this sort of way. At least from his perspective.
This is much more lasting.
Yeah, this is just like there's nothing that
he can't fit in
to change it. They're not going to soften on this. They do not like inner planet people. They don't like them. And that's it. End of story. It's not going to change.
It's too bad.
It is. But also I think a good character point to point out with Miller is he seems like a very reasonable person. And we kind of talked about it before, but it's all facts. And he's kind of trying to explain to Havelock why and what the situation is. He's like, you just kind of don't get it.
Yeah.
He's kind of tries to explain to him why the Belters are the way they are.
Yes. So they're in that cop bar, the second venue or whatever, and we get some worthless information about who runs it and why and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of different names.
Yeah, it's just unimportant stuff, but it adds detail to the world. It gives it a feel of reality. And then all of a sudden, everybody's data pads start going off. Everybody in there is basically a cop. And all of the security forces, everybody, their phones are going off. And it's Shadid, and she's letting them know, if you're near an Earther or a civilian, turn your phone off right now. If you're not, this is what's going on. We just got a message, and it's bad news.
Miller knew just by looking at him that he was an Earther. And then it starts, my name is James Holden. So,
which is how the last chapter ended?
No. The last chapter ended with the captain, with Holden saying, let's go. And the captain saying, we've got a problem.
Right.
So we don't know what's going on.
But we know it's Jim Holden, so there's a connection now between them.
Right. And we know what he's up to.
All right, so did we learn anything valuable in this chapter besides what we've already gone over?
Just the relationships between the people in this world, which moving forward, I think is going to be important. It paints a picture of different people's perspectives and maybe their motivations. They did throw a lot of names at us, which I don't think are important until they maybe become important. He mentioned the EMCA, the Earth-Mars Coalition Army. So obviously they have a coalition army. But other than that, no, it's just Havelock and Miller continuing their relationship. And then we get this transmission from James Holden, which the captain is obviously super concerned about, like that it's going to call, like she's obviously getting all the forces together, or all of her men and women.
Right.
So obviously whatever's in this transmission is something's going on.
Yeah, it's something in her demeanor, but like the fact that everybody's phone rang at the same time is a indication that there's a problem.
Right. Like, did something blow up? Like, what is happening?
It wasn't just Miller getting a call. Hey, we got a problem. It was everybody.
Yeah.
So we know something big is going on. Yeah. So I don't have anything to add to this chapter as far as that goes, except
me either.
There was a piece of dialogue in here that I really, really liked that made me think that this is a good noir. Right.
Okay. What was it? What page?
It's on the top of page 38. When Miller is talking to the guy that runs the Blue Frog, and he's like, your partner's here again. And should I, I think he's having a bad night. Should I keep serving him? And Miller's like, yeah, keep him happy. Give me 20 minutes. And he's like, he doesn't want to be kept happy. He very much wants a reason to get unhappy. And Miller responds, make it hard to find. I just thought, so good. That is so hard-boiled detective.
Yeah.
You know? Just a good line, really good line. The last thing I'd like to point out is that Shadid, when she tells the cops that if you're in the vicinity of a civilian, turn off now.
Yeah. That
is a theme, I believe, where we're going to see that there are people who believe that information has to be controlled tightly. And this is an example of Shadid doing that. And I'm pretty sure Miller agrees with her that is the way that information needs to be treated.
Yes, I think in any crowd control sort of situation, that's probably...
there's definitely viable reasons for it. I'm just pointing out that seems to be her mindset. All right, so let's move on to chapter 5.
Back to Holden.
Chapter 5, Holden. All right, Holden and crew are doing a fast burn back to the Canterbury when a sensor anomaly that was detected by the Cant turns out to be actually a ship. And that ship happens to have torpedoes.
And aren't there also multiple ships that it actually ends up being multiple ships?
No, it's one ship with 6 torpedoes.
Okay.
The little yellow things that show up on their screens are torpedoes.
Okay.
They're an hour out in the night. They're not going to get back to the Cant. This ship that showed up was invisible. Nobody could see it. Becca, she noticed this anomaly. It was, they're sending out their sensor sweep, which is literally putting power energy out, and they're hoping that it'll bounce back, radar, LiDAR, etc. They'll get information that way. It's an active sensor package. So nothing's coming back. But they happen to notice after a while that there's a little bit of an outline, like this circular weird shape of heat in the infrared. And like, that's weird.
Stealth technology.
Right. So it's 200,000 kilometers away from the Canterbury, and she noticed it. And that is the reason that the captain was like, hey, we got a problem here. Get out of there. We don't know what this is. And they're like, hey, if that's stealth technology, that's one, it's rare. And 2, they have bad intentions. Their intentions are bad.
Right.
So the Knight is on its way back under high burn, like 2 Gs or something like that. But it's going to take them an hour to get back. The anomaly turns out to be a ship, and they immediately launch 6 torpedoes.
Right. They're not going to make it, if I remember correctly, they won't make it back in time before the torpedoes hit.
Not a chance.
Canterbury.
I think Ade says that the torpedoes will hit in 8 minutes.
Right. There's no way to get there, even if they do the juice.
Yes. Well, explain what that is, will you?
Yeah. The juice is this chemical cocktail that gets pumped into their spines, their body, through their spinal cord, I believe, that makes it so that they won't die while they travel this fast, basically.
Yeah,
in the
keeps
most
them
basic of terms.
Yeah, I think stroke was the main medical condition that will kill them if they go under hygiene. But I looked this up a while back, and humans go unconscious generally between 5 and 6G.
Okay.
Can't take it. It's just, the blood doesn't flow properly and your mind goes. So they have to have something to keep them conscious. For the people like the pilot, the XO, they need to be conscious.
Yeah. So
everybody else goes out. Everybody else gets knocked out.
Yeah. Yeah. Naomi, Amos, they're all asleep essentially. And Jim and Alex have to. Are they also on the juice though? But they go on the juice, but they get a different cocktail that knocks them out. Whereas Alex and Jim get the other chemicals that keep them awake.
Yeah. Sedative versus a stimulant, I imagine.
And it's still really hard to maneuver even.
He said it was impossible. There's like a giant sitting on his chest. He can't talk. I mean, he can't do any of that stuff. Like, I don't know how they're piloting the ship.
I don't know either, unless it's all the controls are just super close to Alex or something. Who knows? I don't know.
Well, we already today have technology that allows people to put a cap over your head and control a cursor on a computer screen.
Wow.
So it's not unreasonable to expect that 300 years from now, that technology will be real good.
Interesting.
So I imagine they can pilot just by thinking about it. Which also begs the question: why not just do it from the Canterbury?
Yeah. Well,
the risk to life and limb is real.
I hate to say it, but plot.
No, you're right. It's fiction. Fiction. We're not here to read books about robots.
No, this isn't real. This is.
I am a firm believer that you should not let science get in the way of fiction. But for people who are scientifically literate, you can really turn your readers off by fudging that stuff a little too far. So I also calculated the speed of the torpedoes because I was curious. Oh my gosh. It's 200,000 kilometers. I'm thinking
if this is real. I've calculated the speed of the torpedoes.
Well, I'm curious, like how fast are the torpedoes going? And on average, they're going 416.66 kilometers per second.
That is insane. I do appreciate because space is just massive. We don't even know. We can't even comprehend the massiveness of space. So
it's vast.
Them being an hour out from the Cant. I appreciate.
You know what? I was wrong about the penis. So I'm going to do the math again.
Penis.
Yeah, I was wrong about the penis. I just said that.
Not penis.
Let's do the math again. Just.
Wait, what math? What math are we doing?
I'm doing the 200,000. The ship is 200,000 kilometers away from the Canterbury.
Okay.
It takes 8 minutes for the torpedoes to get there.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So that's 8 times 60 is 480 seconds. No, that's correct. 416 kilometers per second.
That's wild. It's hard to comprehend.
That's ridiculously fast.
Yeah. Think of how far away that ship is from the Cant, and then how far away the night is from the Cant.
Let's put it into miles because that's how you and I think, right?
Sure.
All right, so let's convert that.
It's just so hard to imagine.
I wish we'd go metric instead of imperial. I really don't like it. All right, 200,000.
There's some town in Arizona that's metric.
Well, good for them. They also don't have daylight savings time in Arizona, which I also really want to get rid of.
Maybe you should move to Arizona.
Not worth it.
Oh.
All right, so
Mexico, isn't it like the same? I'm just being.
It's a lot hotter there.
Oh, ugh.
124,274 miles.
Yeah, that's just crazy.
That's how far away they were. 124,000 miles.
For the night from the Cant or the torpedo or the ship?
The distance between the stealth ship and the Canterbury.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's just crazy. And the fact that they're that far away, but still aren't going to be able to escape their fate.
But they try.
Of course they try, but that's just the amazing part, that they can't. And even with that amount of space, it's crazy.
Yeah. Becca tries everything. She puts out chaff. She tries to they have a targeting laser that's painting them, and so she's trying to disrupt that, and nothing's working.
And Naomi's also trying to come up with some ideas, like maybe they can get the torpedoes to follow them instead, and then do some maneuver so they don't get blown up.
Yeah, but none of that's going to work.
So the captain, it finally comes down to there's nothing they can do. So the Knight, Holden and his crew on the Knight are going to be there essentially to pick up the pieces after they've been hit.
Yeah, bear witness
That's
too.
the next plan. But before we go further, there's a funny line about Amos, or that Holden says he's telling everyone to shut up on the comms because everyone's like talking and blah, blah, blah. So he gives his orders. He's like, Naomi, set up a 3-way channel with Becca, you and me. We'll help however we can. And then he says, Amos, keep cussing, but turn your mic off.
Yeah.
Keep doing what you're doing. I'm not telling you to stop, but I can't listen to this right now.
Yeah, well, I mean,
thought that was funny.
It was funny. I agree. It was a good moment. It was very realistic too, because when they find out that the torpedoes have just been launched at their home ship, it's like, of course, everybody starts talking at once.
Yeah. Everyone has an idea or a question or.
So the people in the camp, Captain McDowell, he knows they're going to get hit. So he tells Ade, we got to try it. Try to bring the Epstein drive online. That's the most powerful engine they have. Maybe they can evade. They do. It breaks a strut. They're basically stalled in the water because it turns the engine offline. The problem is they're under the impression that these are pirates.
Right.
And that they're going to put a hole in their ship. Their biggest concern is that they might get spaced.
Right.
They're hoping that the crew of the Knight will witness and that the pirates won't space everybody because there are witnesses.
Right, exactly.
But what they weren't really counting on was the fact that those weren't torpedoes intended to just hold the ship. They were nuclear weapons, and they destroyed the camp utterly.
Essentially vaporized the ship.
Completely. Yeah, completely.
Nothing is left.
And Holden immediately wonders, like, why? What was the purpose? They're not pirates. They can't be pirates because
they're just
they want to get paid.
They're just an ice hauler. Why even vaporize that? Like, none of it makes sense.
No, nothing makes sense. Pirates would be doing this to make money, and they're not going to make any money off of destroying a ship unless it was an assassination, essentially. Blow up this ship.
You wouldn't assassinate a competitor. You just destroy their stuff and steal their crap. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
So they're not pirates.
Right.
And Holden knows that immediately. And he doesn't understand what just happened. And obviously he's very emotionally upset. But he wakes up everybody. They turn tail to go hide, I guess. And he's doing all these he's making all of his decisions based on emotion at this point. Where he broadcasts a tight beam to the ship, the stealth ship, and he's like, these are the people that were on that ship, damn you just killed 50 of my friends, blah blah blah. And then they get painted on the Knight, they get painted with that same targeting laser.
Yes.
And that ship takes off, and Holden wants to follow him and all this stuff, and he's now the captain. He just got promoted, lucky him. And Nagata's like, I'm now the XO and you're not following that ship. Your job is now to get us to safety, and you're going to do that, and I'm going to see to it. So eat it. Again, another reason why I like her, because she keeps her head when Holden loses it. She keeps her head. So I'm already liking Nagata. I already liked her. And now I like her even better. So now I like Nagata best, Yeah,
well, there's
because Becca died.
She says, "What now, Captain?" Naomi said, looking at him hard. You're in charge now. Act like it, is what she thinks, or is what he knows that look means.
Yeah.
She's already being a good second in command.
Right. And the first thing he does is he ignores her completely, and he sends out a message.
Right.
Which is received at Ceres Station, which causes alarm among the cops there.
Well, the reason that it's sent out is because Alex, the Martian pilot, mentions that that's stealth technology. And the last time he's seen anything like that was when he was in the Navy.
Yeah.
So already that little prejudice nugget gets put into Holden and everyone else's head.
Yeah.
They start taking apart the black box to try to find any sort of markings on it.
Right.
Not thinking they're going to find anything. Then on the bottom of the battery is a Martian serial number, which without thinking at all, Holden just goes into making this video and then transmitting it.
Right.
Essentially blaming the Martians, even though he doesn't really blame the Martians. He just says, oh, there's a Martian serial number on this. You can put it together.
Yeah, put 2 and 2 together for yourself.
Yeah. So
it's also mentioned that nuclear torpedoes are very hard to get if you're not in the military.
Ah, yeah, that too.
So there are a couple of reasons to suspect that it was a military attack.
Yes.
And there's one reason to point the finger at the Martians.
Right. But with no other markings on anything, just being somebody who's seen a lot of TV and movies, that could also be seen as a pretty overt frame job as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice, real subtle frame job.
Yeah. So we've got the Martians with a Navy. We've got inner planets with a Navy, or Earth with a Navy. We've got the Army Coalition with Earth and Mars. And as far as we know, the belt doesn't have any sort of thing like that. We know the OPA exists, but they just seem like
they're spring chickens.
I don't want to call them a terrorist organization, but that is how they're viewed by outsiders.
Oh, no. Miller thinks of them as a terrorist organization also.
Yeah.
And he is a belter.
Those are the players right now.
Okay, so the authors specifically set this dichotomy up where you've got Miller on the station who believes you need to control information.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got Holden, who they referred to as the holy fool, I believe, who believes that information just be put out. It does, like interpretation, etc., is irrelevant. You give everybody the information and let them do with it what they need to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Holden. And so he broadcasts all that information. If he would have just left out the words Martian serial number,
right,
everything would have been fine. There would have been no problem. But because he put that information in his message, there's a problem.
Yeah. Shit's gonna hit the fan.
We don't really realize that at this point, I don't think. And I don't know if I would have ever made that jump.
We don't 100% realize it, but obviously in the last chapter, the message that they were receiving was this message.
Yes.
We know that the captain's really concerned about it. Obviously, it's going to mean something to the people on Ceres.
Right.
We can make that connection just because they're all concerned about what's going to happen and they all got this transmission. There's weird things going on.
Yeah. Now is the time to discuss the name Scopuli.
Okay.
So what happened in summary, was the Scopuli crew was removed from their ship. The Scopuli itself was put next to an asteroid, and a transmission was beamed from it.
Yes.
And then the nearest ship came by.
From a little black box, which was placed on it.
Yeah. But another ship comes by, because that's the law. Somebody has to render aid. The nearest ship renders aid. And that ship is then vaporized by a military warship.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened, right? So Scopuli means escarpment or outcropping of rock.
Okay.
But Sirenum Scopuli are the 3 islands in Greek mythology written about by Virgil and Ovid, where the sirens lived. So named the ship after the island where the sirens live. And if you think about it, it's pretty appropriate, because it was a siren song that lured those sailors to their death.
Definitely. In the Greek mythology, was there a purpose for that?
For the sirens?
Or was it just for pure destruction? Did they take survivors? I'm
they did not. No, they did not.
Familiar with the story.
I can only recall Odysseus puts the stuff in his ears so that he can listen. No. All the sailors put the wax in their ears so they're immune to the siren song.
Yes.
But he ties himself to the mast of the ship so he can listen to the song and is not going to steer the ship onto the rocks. They know it's a threat in the mythology. But
why did he have to hear the song though?
I don't remember. Honestly, I don't remember. He might have just wanted to know, He might have just wanted to hear it. It's not like they ran out of wax.
I'm just wondering if there is a connection with purpose there, like why the sirens.
It's just a nod, honestly.
Okay.
I think it's just a nod. The purpose of that ship was to lure sailors to their death.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody wanted to set a trap, and they did that, and the authors cleverly called it scopuli.
What's kind of interesting, though, is that it wasn't the knight that got vaporized, it was the cant, which is way far away from the scopuli. So I find that interesting. Like, the knight didn't get blown up. They're the ones that were lured to the rock.
No, that's true. That's true. I can't answer.
I'm not trying to make an exact correlation or anything. I'm just pointing that out.
No, I'm thinking about it right now. The Cant being destroyed, that's the ship that can get them home.
Okay, I'm just thinking about this now. Here's another question, though. Let's say it was not if it was the Martians or if it was a frame job to frame the Martians, it doesn't matter. Why leave the knight alive? Why leave those people alive unless they, like, whoever lured them wants this to get out?
Yeah.
What I'm saying.
I think that's a very fair assumption.
Yeah, otherwise you'd kill the knight. There's no reason to leave them alive.
Absolutely.
Even though they were painted, like you said.
It was just a little power play. Just
like a little scare tactic.
And we can destroy you right now, and we're choosing not to.
Don't come after us. Just do what you're going to do. Be our fodder.
Right. But that's another reason why Naomi Nagata should be the captain and not Holden.
Yeah.
Because I think she might have thought about that before sending out that message.
Well, I think all that stuff with Ade, too, is just to make it clear to us that he is an emotional man. And that is how he bases his decisions.
Yeah.
I think.
I mean,
obviously, that's how he's operating so far. He's doing things mostly based off of emotion.
And what he thinks is right. He thinks that telling people, like he said that they need to know. He woke up the crew down below to tell them that the Canterbury had been nuked.
Yeah.
Because they needed to know. He thinks that the access to the information is a right.
Yes.
And whether or not that's an emotional thing is, I don't know. But he clearly does not think about information politically.
Well, he's obviously, it may not be emotional, but it's definitely based off of convictions. Personal convictions, I guess.
All right. Chapter 6, back on Ceres Station, Miller. So, Ceres Station is on the precipice of a riot.
Yes, that is why Shadid was so concerned.
Right. And I guess the idea behind that is that, see, I don't get it either, and it's because I grew up in a gravity well and I'm not from the belt, so I don't get it.
Here's why. Miller explains it to Havelock because Havelock doesn't get it either.
Because Havelock's like us.
Why would anybody care that some ice hauler got blown up in space? Like, who cares? What's the big deal? The big deal is Belters care very much about the environmental systems that they rely on for survival. That is water to all of these people out here. And they already think that Mars and Earth are against them. They are the grunt class, the worker class. They are the ones working and distributing out and working on the ports with all of this supply and water and food and all of this stuff. This greatly affects their life. And if they think the Martians did this, it's just another reason to hate them.
Do you think it would matter if it was Earth versus Mars? Do you think it matters?
No, it'd be the same reaction.
Exact
same reaction. It doesn't matter that it was Mars and not Earth. If it was Earth and not Mars, it'd be the same reaction.
Okay. Again, though, like Havelock points out that there's no shortage of water. There's also no shortage of ice haulers. You know, so why freak out? Why are they freaking out?
Because it's like the rule. It's almost like the emergency signal rule in space. It's the Belter. It's just the way they live. You do not mess with that stuff. We all have to live off of our recycled waste and everything. And one little hiccup could affect lots of people.
Yes, it is their livelihood. Miller tells us a story about a guy who was a property manager up in kind of a low rent district on Ceres, and he was cutting corners and he wasn't putting in the filters for the air circulation system, and mold had started to grow in some of the apartments.
Yeah.
And The response was somebody burned off half of his flesh and threw him out into space.
Yep. And everyone was
guess
cool
what? Guess what? The cops didn't even investigate. Once they found out why he'd been spaced, they just stopped caring.
Right.
Because that's the Belter attitude.
Right.
You don't mess with environmental systems. Anybody that was willing to treat that stuff with lax attention is now dead.
Mm-hmm. They took care of themselves. They took care of their own business.
No choice. If you think about the way Ceres is structured in this story, it is a hollowed out asteroid. I'm sorry. Miller says at one point that he doesn't even like to go down to a certain level, the outermost levels by the docks, because it's so close to space.
Yes.
There's so little rock between him and outer space. It makes him uncomfortable. And they don't walk around in spacesuits. So if there's a breach, they're going out.
No, it's like they're not Earthers, but it's like they're Earthers, but it's different. And at the very beginning of this chapter, while Miller's explaining this, Havelock says selective effect.
That stuff was confusing to me. I gotta be honest.
You're seriously arguing in favor of select effect. And basically what Miller's saying is like, well, yeah. So like what Havelock means by that is we're all the same. We're all humans. What is the difference here? We're all the same race, basically. And Miller's saying, well, kind of no. Like we've kind of evolved. Like some people think that this affects our brains as well. And Miller's kind of on that side. That the Belters are their own race. They are different from everyone else.
I guarantee you they're gonna be.
Well, and that's what selective effect is. That's what he's saying. And Havelock's like, that's racist propaganda BS. And Miller's like, it's kind of not.
I disagree with Havelock on that entirely. Yeah. It's not racist.
Well, Miller's like, no, we are different, and this is our world, and that's why you don't get it. That's why the Earthers don't get it, because the Belters truly think that they are of themselves. They're their own people.
All right. Well, I was not convinced by the arguments put in the book. I can understand your point a little bit better, but I wasn't convinced by the book. That it's convinced that it was racist. It didn't seem racist.
That was Havelock's view.
Yeah, it didn't seem racist to me at all. It's just like pointing. It's like stating the obvious. You know, like of course they live in a different circumstance. Of course they're going to have a different view.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Totally. But
how is that racist? That sounds like modern people running around calling people racist because they don't like what they're saying.
But I think that just goes back to any propaganda. Like Havelock calls it racist propaganda, whereas he's maybe been fed that
a different set
of propaganda. Yeah, it just shows their different perspectives on space,
right?
And the people in space.
All right. So anyway, they get back to the station, and Shadid is telling them what's going to happen. You know, they're bracing for a riot. Right? Get out the riot gear, and then go do your job, essentially.
This is just another reason for this OPA group, whether it's true or not, they can latch onto this for their own purposes to push their agenda and their fear-mongering to get the Belters on their side, which is anti-Earth and Mars as well.
Right.
That's why this is also a thing. They can just use this as something to rile everybody up, which is, I think, what I assume Shadid is thinking as well.
Right. And she's responsible for security of the station, whether she's sympathetic or not. Her job says keep.
Yeah.
That's the thing I didn't understand, though.
They're assigned to the port city, the port levels.
Yeah, no, I get that. But if we've got Belters who treat any attack on their atmospheric system or their supplies as like a violent affront, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet they're willing to riot on a station. I mean, isn't that a conflict right there? That's a conflict of interest, big time. Like no Belter in their right mind would riot.
I think that's where the OPA comes in, though. I think that maybe normal people wouldn't. Let's talk about it when we get to
all right.
What happens. So Miller's getting his guys together. They're going to go get their weapons. They're going to gear up.
Riot gear.
Yep.
Shields and batons and shin guards and etc.
And they open up the lockers and there's nothing there. Or there's I think there's nothing there. Or there's enough.
Those lockers are empty. He said there were coffins with no bodies in them.
Yeah. So what's that all about?
They got stolen. Everything's gone.
By who?
We don't know yet.
But I mean, are we to assume that it was stolen by potential rioters?
No, we're not to assume anything at this point.
It was just odd to me. I mean, I assumed that it was somebody on the inside or something.
It's definitely somebody on the inside.
Something a little higher up, let's say.
It's definitely somebody on the inside, but we have no information other than the stuff is gone.
We don't. But it was definitely odd.
Yeah, it is odd. But
so the captain's like, shoot, well, we've got the SWAT gear. There's enough for like 2 in each group.
Yeah.
And that's about all you guys are going to get.
Yeah, and that stuff's for killing. It's not for riot suppression. It's for killing.
So Miller made note in his head. He's like, well, I guess our assignment changed because they were assigned to crowd control, basically, not kill anybody.
Right.
Because killing people is just going to start a riot.
Well, yeah.
Potentially.
It's bad form regardless.
Yeah.
It's bad.
They go out. They go out to the ports.
Right. And it doesn't take them long. There's somebody's getting beaten to death almost, within a couple of minutes of them getting out there, they find some big shirtless muscle-bound steroid popping freak beating somebody to death.
Mm-hmm.
And it's some short, stocky woman from a gravity well, and he stomps on her neck and kills her right in front of everybody, and they're cheering. 60 some odd people are all, yay, awesome, murder's great.
I like the way it was described. Miller said he's still 100 feet from the turn that would take them to the clot of human violence.
Yeah.
The clot in the crowd of this jerk beating down. That's probably a pretty tame term for him.
Right.
He also had an OPA tattoo on his arm.
Yeah, he did.
His OPA sending their thugs out to rile the people up.
Yeah, get them on their side.
Probably true.
This big dude, he's already committed murder, and Miller's like, hey, stand down, disperse right now, or you're all going to jail as accessories to murder.
Yeah.
Somebody throws a wrench at him, beans him in the head with it, and he's all like, oh, God, that hurt.
He's like, don't shoot or stand down, and the crowd laughs because he thinks that he's telling them. Yeah. When he's talking to his guys and gals. He's like, don't do anything, I'm fine.
That big muscly dude, when he's like, he's taunting Miller by flexing his pecs.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
And like the one of Miller's guys wants to shoot him, and he doesn't.
Well, he tells him to stand down.
Miller's trying to talk to the big guy, and I don't know what happens, but he finally says
the big guy calls him a bitch. And
is that when he says kneecap him?
He calls him a bitch, and then Miller still tries to talk him down, and then he calls him a bitch in gutter German, and he's like, all right, I've had enough, kneecap him. And the 2 snipers each take out 1 knee, and the guy goes down.
Yeah.
And crowd disperses.
Yeah.
And he tells the guy, if you even look at me wrong, I'm going to space you. Do we understand each other? Like, yes.
And Miller knew he understood.
Yeah. So that's the end of the riot.
Taken to his knees.
Yeah, that's the end of the riot. And he said that, sure. But, 1 person died and the riot was quelled, at least in their area.
Yeah.
And that's not bad. That's not bad. And let's be honest, it could have gotten a lot worse. They could have gotten those 60 people could have gotten a hold of an entire group of Earthers or interplanet types.
Or could have just grabbed Miller and some of his guys. Like, what stopped them from just overtaking them?
They are armed.
Not Miller. Not the people, like 2 out of each group. So the snipers were like far away.
Remember that Miller, this very night, strapped a gun to his ankle?
That's right, a plastic gun.
Yeah, but plastic bullets are enough to kill people.
No. I'm just I do remember that. That stands out in my mind.
These are all cops. They all have guns.
Yeah. They assume that they have guns for sure.
Yeah. So they weren't going to go down without a fight. And there were pistols among the rioters too. There were at least 2 pistols that Miller counted.
Yes.
Along with a lot of handheld weapons.
Yes.
All right. So that's chapter 6.
Well, I will just, because I don't know if it'll get cut out earlier or not, but we also learn in this chapter that, because Miller's asking about, well, what about the government offices and whatnot? And this is where we find out where Shadid's like, they've got their own security force. They've already locked down and they're not even involved in any of this.
They've got their own air supply even.
Right, exactly. She's like, we're not even breathing their air right now. So whatever. So I just found that interesting.
Okay, so in order to try to quell the riot before, or maybe it was after they kneecapped that guy. Hold on, let me find that. It's after. Yeah, it's after they kneecap that guy, and he's still trying to disperse the riot. He tells them all that, like, look, this is exactly what they want us to do. They want us to eat our own.
Mm-hmm.
We need to go back to work. We need to stick together. And when it comes time to actually fight, we need to be healthy. This guy, he's now no longer in the fight. You know, the guy that we just kneecapped, he's now a cripple.
Right.
He's not going to be a soldier.
This is exactly what they, quote unquote, they want.
Right. So there is Miller using a form of propaganda of his own, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remember about the whole control of information thing. Like, he's good at propaganda. It said earlier that he was good at a particular type of lie. And that lie that he was better at was convincing people that everything was okay.
Mm.
He wasn't big on bluff and trying to intimidate people.
Right.
He was good at convincing them that everything was going to be okay.
A false sense of security.
Right. But nevertheless, it's control of information, and he's decent at it. So he does convince them to disperse. And
I wonder if that's why he was given Julie Mao's case.
Interesting. Hold on. Let me think about that for a second.
He's good at not revealing information.
Yeah. I wonder if he's just a good detective too, though.
Probably. He's obviously tenured. You know, he's been there a long time.
Yeah, he has. All right. Do you see anything that needs adding?
I don't think I have anything in my notes that
I don't either.
Out to me. I feel like we've talked about a lot of stuff. Havelock and Miller just seeing everything completely different.
Yeah.
Totally different perspective, which I find interesting, though, because Havelock, having really only been born on Earth and has been all over the place, is he just kind of super sheltered in his own way, like he's just never seen it before? Or is it really only a Belter thing? Even though we've heard of the Mars and Earth stuff, Mars and Earth, like Belters view Mars and Earth as exactly the same.
You can cover both planets by holding your thumb out.
Yeah, like they're the people from them to them are the same. Yeah. Belters are the different ones. But Earth thinks that Martians are different, and Martians thinks that Earthers are different.
Yep.
Belters hate them both. So it's an interesting dynamic. We're getting different people's perspectives of that dynamic. I'd say the Kant and all those people, we don't get much of that perspective yet, because they're all living out together in space, just doing their jobs.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think it's been pretty well handled. Like there's a distinction that you're pointing out, and it's obvious, right?
Yes.
It's not like we have to interpret anything. Like, we're seeing the effects of that difference. Mm-hmm. It's obvious in the way people talk and what they're talking about. So yeah, no, I think it's very expertly handled up to this point. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I'm more intrigued by the crime noir sections than I am by the space opera stuff so far. Like, that's, to me, there's more conflict there. There's more. That stuff's more interesting. You've got a nameless enemy, with a stealth ship, big whoop.
Right. All that stuff seems like it's going to affect stuff, but in different ways.
Undeniable. Undeniable.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we already know there's the Julie connection. We already see.
What do you think the Julie connection is?
What do I think the Julie connection is?
Yeah.
As of right now, I don't think we can say.
Well, we know she got taken off of her ship.
We know very little. We know she's a rich girl from a rich family, from somebody who's very prominent.
Plutarch, a wealthy person.
That's kind of all we know, though. So we can imagine.
Roughly. I mean, we know what her circumstances are right now.
Not really.
Yeah, we do. Sure we do. We know that she's on that ship with Akira, and we know that her parents consider her missing, and we know that she was a member of the OPA.
Sure. She's all right. She's all by herself, and she even thinks to herself, maybe she can pilot this ship. She's not even sure she can pilot this ship.
Right.
That's why she was going to the engineering room to begin with, to try to get the ship online. But can you honestly think that at this point she's safe?
Hell no.
I mean, everybody on that ship was, I think we can assume, absorbed by Akira.
I would assume that she's already doomed.
Absorbed. Yeah.
I assume she's doomed. She's going to die.
She's absorbed by the goo.
She's got no chance.
No chance.
No
No
chance.
chance in hell.
That's my interpretation as it stands right now. And
Same here.
Miller has been assigned to find her and send her back home. So
he's on a wild goose chase at this point.
Yeah, very, very possible.
Completely. Because how would, since we know where she is.
Well, yeah.
You know, essentially. How the hell is he going to get to that point?
I don't know. I have to assume that she is going to be able to, that ship's got to be discovered somehow. Right. It either gets to Ceres or somebody finds it. Same thing's true with Holden, though. You know, the Knight, is the Knight capable of getting all the way back to Ceres? Because it's just on the inside. It's like, it's just closer to Jupiter.
Transport. It's a shuttle thing.
It's a shuttle, and it's closer to Jupiter than Ceres.
But it was capable of some sort of high travel because they were able to juice. So they're able to travel fast, at least.
They described the usage of fuel to travel at that speed as prodigious. So it's burning through its fuel super fast.
Gotcha.
So I don't know if they have enough fuel to get back to Ceres. I would say no. It's not intended for long distance travel, and that is a long way.
Yeah, I don't know, but
I don't know how they're going to get back. I assume they're going to have to send out a SOS, and somebody's going to have to come and pick them up. That's a guess.
They're definitely going to have to come up with a plan.
How are you liking it so far?
I like it.
That's it? You just like it?
Well, we kind of just started.
Yeah, but I mean, initial impressions.
There's a lot of setup happening right now. It's like it's set up with plot though. Like there's still a lot going on.
Yeah.
The setup is within the plot. And I do like that. I like when things are kind of woven in.
Yes, I do too.
Yeah, I like it. I'm kind of with you though, as far as Holden goes. I'm not necessarily a fan of him yet.
Not yet. And I don't know if I ever will be. Just based on what I've seen so far, I'm already kind of sour on the guy.
So I'm going to throw a little show spoilers at you. But not really spoilers, more like mental spoilers. Like,
all right, so tell me about the show then.
So when you were mentioning how you didn't care about Julie.
Yeah.
I found it interesting because I kind of want to be more open-minded about it in the books, because in the show, I kind of don't care about her either.
Oh. Why?
But Miller really cares.
Miller does?
I don't. And I'm not sure why. Like I can't get that connection.
Oh, okay.
Through Miller, that Miller obviously for some reason has. Like,
well, not in the book he doesn't.
Obviously he's going to keep pursuing this.
You're further into the show than you are into the book. So if you were at the same point in the book and the show, does Miller care at this point? And does he care disproportionate to sensibleness? Right?
Well, see, I don't think he can care because he's literally just been given this assignment and he's just going through the file. Like, there's not much there. Like, he's going to, I don't know if it happens in the book, but he goes to her apartment quite often to try to kind of get the vibe of who this girl was and discover things there. So, no.
Her apartment's on Ceres?
I can't. There's going to be a lot of different places we go to, and I can't quite remember. But it might be on Ceres. It might be.
I seem to recall that she worked at Tycho.
Okay, it might be at Tycho where her apartment is.
Yeah.
Who cares? I don't remember.
Yeah.
But at this point, well, no. I mean, it's so early. He doesn't know anything. He starts finding out more. Starts caring a little bit more. But even there's something that happens that's such a huge spoiler that I'm not even going to say what it is. But even at that point, I kind of don't feel it. And I'm not sure why. It could just be Tom Jane's performance in it. So I don't feel his emotion.
That's the actress?
That's the actor who plays Miller.
Oh, okay.
So like maybe I don't feel his connection to her because of him, but I think he does a good job. So I'm not sure why I don't care about Julie. Maybe it is because she's just kind of thinly drawn as a character.
Okay.
She's just, like you said, she's a rich girl who, went off and whatever. We're not going to get much more info on Julie.
Okay. Well, I frequently go back to Harry Potter when I want to think about how characters are made to be sympathetic. And one of the ways is to abuse that character.
Sure.
Like have have the character beaten to a bloody pulp, have the character mistreated and abused and all of these, Harry Potter was kept in a closet under some stairs by his relatives.
We will find out. I said we weren't going to find out more about Julie, but we will find out more that will make her more sympathetic. 100%.
Well, I hope so, because right now I don't give a shit.
I'll be interested to see what you think at that point, but you might not care at that point either. I'm not going to say what it is.
No, I got you. I don't want to know. I want to get there. I mean, I've read the book before, so I know some of the stuff, but my memory is the way. Yeah,
and I don't know how the first book ends, and I don't, as compared to the show or anything. So honestly, I don't want to.
I can't tell you. I don't remember. Like, I remember some stuff, but I don't remember anybody. I don't remember who was involved with any of it.
Yeah.
Or where it took place, or. It was years ago. I read it years ago, but I read it avidly the first time I read it. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I'm enjoying it right now. But I'm purposefully being more critical than I was on the first reading, and I think that's kind of the point of what we're doing here, is to be a little bit more critical.
Definitely.
Okay, so anyway, thank you for joining us for our premiere episode of Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. I'm having a good time. What about you, Jill?
I'm having a good time. I hope people were able to follow along with us.
I think that anybody that's reading the book is going to be able to follow along just fine. We didn't cover anything ridiculous. We're not stretching too far.
No.
I
think it went well.
I do too. All right. So thank you for joining us. If you like what we're doing, please support us in all the typical ways. And for those of you who have stuck around to the end, thank you, but also we are looking for a permanent name change for this show. And if you have any ideas about that, if you have any suggestions for us, we would like to hear from you. So feel free to leave comments and etc. what you think might be a good name change.
You should make it clear, just in case people have maybe only listened to this, that when you say this show.
Oh, yeah.
The whole show, which is the Science Fiction and Fantasy Read Along.
Yes. Podcast. The podcast is called Science Fiction Fantasy Read Along.
Not just a title for this book show.
We're not changing the title of the book.
No. But I mean, some people might come up with whatever,
Right. But it needs to be relevant to what we're doing, which is slightly more critical readings of science fiction fantasy novels.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.